Alright, we are recording, continuing in Just Cause 2. And hang on. Sorry, got to pull something out of my pocket. I always like to empty my pockets of stuff. It was a handkerchief. I like having that out of my pocket when I'm sitting. Do have things to talk about. A few things. 5. Actually, it might be more. I think some of them I have, like, stuff next to each other. Yeah, let's start with that one. See, I'm also trying to predict which is going to trigger me to ramble. Because I know it's going to happen. I should really pick the one that it's, like, you're not going to hurt so much, or is even going to be appropriate. So we can try to head up there to those. I'm just... that. So yeah, first up, I figure, it'd be worth... This one I shouldn't have to ramble too much about. Dying Light 2, its first major story DLC, has been delayed. They were aiming for early summer, if I remember correctly, but it's now going to be aiming for September. And, I mean, it's the usual explanation. You know, it's, you know, Techland feels that, you know, just they need the additional time to polish and make sure it lives up to community standards, which, I mean, I really enjoyed Dying Light 2, so I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I'm also, you know, very willing to say, and this is just broadly, do you really think, just generic developers and publishers, do you really think you need to tell us that every single time? We get it. That's why it's like, yeah, we're having to delay it. And you could probably just stop there, because either people recognize that's why, because that's always the reason given, or they're going to say, yeah, that's not actually it, because that's what's always said. I don't know if the... Okay, we do have helicopters. 2. Fat. I'll take the one that actually has weapons. Okay, let's... mark it. I could try asking, but I haven't, if, I'll be able to get it. If I'll be provided a key for it, although it's also possible that the original key will already include that. But I don't know if I will be reviewing it or not, or rather when I will be reviewing. You know, it's just how I've been, you know, trying to do DLC reviews. When I do them, I prefer to wait so I can do all of them together. I think that that's the most appropriate way. I don't know if anyone really agrees with me on that, but it's... You know, I don't have unlimited time, so it's... You know, it's not like some outlets that, you know, can definitely do the whole... You know, I am rambling on this anyway. But some outlets where it's like, oh yeah, we can review every single DLC for a game if we think that the game was, you know, interesting enough to warrant that. It's like, yeah, I can't do that. But it's also, you know, for some games that's a reason for me to replay the entire game. I don't... Well, actually, I guess I could. It would oh, no. I don't know if I'd want to replay all of Dying Light 2 for that. Depends on if by the time they finish with the DLC, if I will have already done a second playthrough or not. Also reminds me, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it had its Ragnarok DLC come out already, hasn't it? I don't even remember seeing anything really talking about that too much when it did come out. But I think that was the last one, and I do want to go back to that, but it's just... it's some thing to put as day job. I mean, it's, you know, I don't have the free time to do it, and I spend my weekends doing other things. And actually this weekend I'm going to spend it reviewing a game. Can't say what game. Just, you know. I don't know if... What, was it Dying Light 2? No, it wasn't Dying Light 2. It was a different game. It was actually really neat. The fact that it actually said in the, like, email with the key that, yes, you can say that you're reviewing the game. You just can't share any impressions. That might have been Weird West. It was Weird West or Dying Light 2. But I definitely appreciate that. Because that is something that I don't know. And I always try to err on the side of, let's just go with I can't. The embargo is not too far, though, so hopefully it won't be long. And also one thing I think I will do with it is, yeah, looking at the stats, it doesn't seem like many people took advantage of the data processing applet I made. And I have a limited number of slots on the free hosting server, so yeah, not entirely sure how I'd share it. And it just a review, I'm not sure how interesting it would be, but what I think I'll do is I'll just like record a video of myself going through it. You know, going through the data, going through the stats, assuming that I do decide to collect performance data in there. Sometimes it's not warranted. I don't know with this one. Yeah, so I might do that. I did share, though. I did make the code open. I did publish it on GitHub for the app, and have continued to make some tweaks to it. Because that's what I do. Anyway, next thing on my list to talk about. This one's actually kind of... It's a first step, but it's an important first step. NVIDIA has published their Linux kernel driver open source, which, that's a big deal. You know, NVIDIA taking something like that open source, it is significant. I mean, that there is no real other way to say that. AMD has had their entire driver be open source. Well, okay, it's not quite their entire driver. It is the majority of it, though. But there are certain binary blobs for that. But it still is, like with an AMD GPU, it'll just run off of the kernel and Mesa. So it's like you don't need to install special drivers. It will just work. At least that is my understanding for somebody. But that is... But that is also, you know, it's not just one part of it. And this is part of what's important. Where did I get the helicopter? Ah, there it is.
Don't take it personally.
So what NVIDIA has shared is the kernel driver thing, and it's in alpha quality. That's even how it was described. And it was Phoronix that I was using for the source for this. I tried looking at NVIDIA and GeForce.com. I didn't see anything there. I will admit, though, I didn't dig too deeply. But Phoronix had a nice write-up. But yeah, so this is only the kernel driver. So this would be, you know, the code that would ultimately go into the Linux kernel itself, which is what Linux refers to. Like, Ubuntu is not actually Linux, it's a Linux distribution. And it's, yeah. It's just one of those things that I know that there is that distinction. And, and there are some people that are very, like, no, this is what Linux is, this is what Linux isn't. Yeah, so this is a first step towards eventually getting, you know, a full open source NVIDIA driver on Linux. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. This needs to be stabilized. As I said, it is being described as alpha quality. But it also, in order for it to be upstream, so that's actually added to the Linux kernel, the protocol is that there must be
we have a visual requesting backup.
open source user space libraries. So, I will acknowledge, I do not always remember what exactly some of these components are. Kernel, if I remember correctly, is the component that is like what actually communicates between the operating system and the hardware. So it's like, you know, this is, so it's what would handle all the firmware communication, also things like telling it, hey, increase your clock speed, hey, you can reduce your clock speed, things like that. That is what the kernel will handle. So I'm trying to watch the minimap. Okay, good. I thought that was the helicopter that I destroyed, but they don't remove from the map until they actually like blow up on the ground. Whereas the user space library, so come back to the NVIDIA open source stuff, that would be like the driver that actually handles OpenGL, handles OpenCL, CUDA, and Vulkan, would be, for examples. And those are like specifically named. You're not going to see DirectX in there because this is on Linux. But like that, you know, those portions would still need to be done. Would still need to be made available before it could be actually put into the kernel, such that, hey, you just install the Linux kernel, you install a distribution, an operating system that uses it, and you're good to go. That's what it would take, is those libraries being available and them being recognized as stable. I might... Yep. Here we go.
Hostile activity in the center. All units report location.
And another one just appeared behind me. Now one thing that, well, okay, I'm just trying to think, because there's many points to this release, and it's just, you know, which ones are best to talk about and in what order, kind of thing. So, there's already some open source drivers for NVIDIA GPUs. The thing is, it's a community project. Novo? I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. And that does in fact include like the OpenGL, Vulkan, such drivers, well, libraries in there, okay? And Phronix kind of pointed out that in theory, NVIDIA could just decide, you know what, that should be included as the user space libraries. I doubt that would happen. Personally, I doubt that would happen. But this release, though, could really, really help with that driver, that community project, because it lacks certain firmware API hooks. So basically, NVIDIA with Turing and newer, so Turing and Ampere, they what was it, graphics systems processor, is that what it is? GSP? And it is what, like, helps handle the control of the GPU, okay? Well, the community project doesn't know how to work with that. They don't know. They just don't know. So newer GPUs, it can't manage, the Nuvo thing can't manage, like, controlling the power states and such. It can't do that. It can do it with older GPUs, especially like Kepler. Maxwell and Pascal are kind of, you know, between rock and a hard place, though. Kind of just stuck there in between. But with this code, in theory, the Nouveau project could gain what it needs, could learn what it needs in order to extend itself to cover the newer GPU.
Fouché! There is this little punk who refuses to pay his due to me. Today his monthly shipments are on the road in this area. Take them out and teach him a lesson, la.
Now one thing that I pointed out that is going to prove interesting is that,
Good. Now get the message through to him. One fan at a time.
cool, they're right here, is that, AMD has had their drivers be open source on Linux for quite a while now, and that does result in some things being revealed early. Because, it's not like in the Windows drivers where it's just, suddenly one day everything is available. No, they need to have the stuff out and ready well ahead.
Excellent. I think that gentleman got the point all right.
Come on. There we go. And there's another one coming, of course. So, yeah, so if AMD wants to have support for RDNA 3 GPUs, they need to start deploying that code into their open source drivers months ahead of time. And that is the case. They're actually, Phoronix is sharing, and even this week was sharing some stuff. I think it was for VCN, so that's the Video Core Next? Video Code Next? Something like that. Code to enable that has actually been added in to the open source drivers already, because it needs to go through the process, so it'll be approved and merged in. So it's like, oh, well, we now know that it's going to be a new version of VCN. Not at all surprising for RDNA 3. But it's like, that's a way to know when certain new features are coming. Not necessarily what the new features are, because there are ways to obfuscate that. But it's still, you can know that. Also, Phoronix will catch, hey, new PCI IDs have been added. Oh, it's back here. So that new PCI IDs are not that really groundbreaking most of the time. That's just basically saying, hey, we are reserving these IDs to recognize certain PCI devices. So ahead of any GPU being worked on, you would need to do that, right? The thing is that AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, they would all over-reserve. So it's like they might be, we're going to put out 5. Let's reserve 15. Maybe not that extreme, but it is, if they need 5, if they only actually need 5, they'll still reserve more than that, maybe 10. Because that way they've got plenty that they can, do various engineering samples and such that, just will fit in there without problem. And, maybe decide that, we're going to offer even more than what we originally think. So that's also a way to know then when, hey, new hardware is being worked on in one way or another. And I do say in one way or another because it could be just a refresh. It could be, nope, actually new hardware. It could also be like, yeah, but this is probably in CDNA, so, a compute-focused card. Which reminds me, I saw a rumor that was interesting, that there might be an upcoming Instinct, that's one of the more compute-focused products from AMD, specifically targeting for machine learning stuff. An inference that would actually be an APU, so it would be combining a CDNA compute core, well, so many of those, with, I think they were saying Zen 4. That would be an interesting pair.
I am a simple man, Scorpio. I have no need of extravagance. Though I do have one little weakness. Race cars.
Ah.
I want you to
I can't just blow things up.
A perfect jewel, owned by the millionaire Tom Gunn.
Is this the one I think it is? Now, I'm still going to take the helicopter because it will be faster to get there. Wait. Well, crap. I didn't realize it was actually driving. So yeah, this news will be interesting, and it'll also, I mean, it's like AMD actually for their drivers on Linux actually have competition. At least for the Vulkan driver, RADV, RADV, is an open source project that's in community for Vulkan implementation, and like if you look at Phoronix, they not infrequently have reviews comparing performance between the official driver and that, because it's that competitive, and it's a community project, as I said. You know, it's like that's you know, not just you know, like something, you know, a different AMD project. No, it's completely done by the community.
Good. Now, all you have to do is drop the car off.
Yeah, I just get there. Hang on. Okay. I think I can do that. Ah, shit.
The car of my dreams is lost in the seas of time.
So I'm used to handbrake being on H. Sorry, on space. I think it's actually on X in this game. But yeah, so we could end up seeing, it would take a while, but we could end up seeing an open source NVIDIA, well, an open source driver for NVIDIA GPUs that could actually directly compete with the official NVIDIA drivers. Should definitely be interesting to see.
Okay, move in. We got him. Good. Good.
There.
Now, all you have to do is drop the car off.
Also have news from AMD, but I'm not looking at the phone, I'm looking at this. One is the actual release of the RDNA 2 refreshers, which I haven't looked too deeply, too closely, but it doesn't seem all that impressive. Like, just looking at the spec sheet, it's like, okay, yeah, they are, you know, clocked a little bit higher, so they should perform a bit better, but their power draw is also increased a little bit too, so it's like, And it seems more of a, at least for a price to performance, more or less a horizontal movement. Which I'm disappointed by, because it's, and I've said this so many times before, I do feel that AMD and NVIDIA, both because of how crazy pricing has been, it would have been wise of them to, if they did a refresh, to take advantage of that time to reset the pricing. Now, to be fair, AMD for the 6800 series and 6900 XT, I think those prices were actually correct. In that, you know, it's like what they set for the MSRPs there is actually what those would be at a normal time. It's more lower down in the stack that it was like, no, that card, you're pricing it much higher than it's really worth. But it still is, they could have, and I believe should have, taken the opportunity to, oh man, it is hard to control this car. It just really, really wants to, slip and slide around.
The perfect racing machine.
I'm gonna die. Oh, hello.
We're dropping like flies here! Send more units!
And I'm just gonna try to get away. Yeah, so it's like, the refreshes doesn't sound like it's much that would terrifically interest me. I mean, I guess on the bright side, at least it's, it's the same series. Because I know that there are some that say that, like the RX 500 series was just a refresh of 400, which isn't completely inaccurate. There was still some changes that they made that, made it more than just that. Here we go. All right.
Don't take no passengers.
But I mean, they did. That was. Was that still the same 14 nanometer? The RX 590 was in 12 nanometer. I don't remember. Was the 580 and 570 also 12 nanometer or not? It's like there were additional refinements with the 500 series. It wasn't just like, oh, we're better binning. There we go. Sure, let's do the stupid thing and attack that island. So yeah, I'm not really, I'm nonplussed by, I can also go at that, by the refreshers there. But also, to be fair, in theory, we're what? Months away from a formal announcement for RDNA 3, I think is a speculation, and that they'll be out by the end of the year. So a refresh, yeah, how much was really needed? Yeah, I mean,
Get us a chopper! Now! We need air support! Now!
But the other, well, there's actually two other things for AMD that are interesting news. One is the release of Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2.0. So that's the Fidelity, well, FSR 1 was just a spatial upscaler, so it just used spatial information, so it would take a single image and upscale it, and also do sharpening and such to it. FSR 2 is temporal based, so it doesn't just use the current frame, it uses previous frames to add additional information in, and that allows it to be much more efficient in its results. Takes more resources to do. There's more processing involved because there's more data involved, and also you need to store that data, but the end result can be much better than just strictly spatial. And the update for Deathloop that included it has gone live, and no, I don't have a copy of Deathloop, but from what I've seen, it's basically AMD did the thing no one, well, few people at least, would have thought they could have done, which is they actually, produced a technology that it is rivaling directly DLSS 2.0, which, well, not even just 2.0, because, crap, what was I saying? That, Deathloop, because Deathloop actually does have DLSS in it, It's 2.3 point something.
Missile locked on target.
Ah, there it is. Ooh. Okay, I see it.
Missile locked on target.
I hear it. Oh.
Launching missile.
Sorry, I'm just kind of distracted by this. But yeah, basically what I was seeing was that it is actually going toe-to-toe for image quality with DLSS, which is fairly significant, but not just because of the achievement, but also because of what it kind of means in certain ways. Now, of course, it's only, one game, so it's one implementation of FSR 2.0, so we do need to wait and see how it is in others. But the visual quality, yeah, was like exactly trading blows. It seemed like from what I was seeing. And by that I mean it's like, yeah, there might be spots where DLSS beats it, but then there's equivalent spots that FSR beats DLSS, so yeah. Why does it sound like there's another missile coming in? There we go. Performance, at least for one place that I saw, it looked like DLSS might have been winning, but not really by much. Like a few FPS faster. So, effectively a tie there. And it's also worth noting the whole, DLSS is an RTX technology, which means it needs an RTX GPU to work, to even be an option. Whereas FSR 2.0 is, you can run that on, GPUs that are many years old. Like the RX 580 in my desktop that I'm using right now could run it. Might not run it as well as some newer GPUs, but it would still run it. And that also includes NVIDIA GPUs, because it's it's just a shader. It's compute work. It doesn't demand specialized hardware like DLSS, which is also that whole, this is how, I don't remember exactly what I said, but how this is also an achievement in that regard, because it proves that the whole, it's like, oh, we have tensor cores and it's AI based. It's like, yeah, that's actually not needed. And it's also worth noting, and where was it? I saw somebody talking about something worth noting with AI training, and I've kind of said this, but this person was speaking with greater authority than me, that something that is neglected with some of this is that, and by neglected I mean people forget, is that it's actually not running an AI on an RTX GPU. That's not what's happening there. The AI was already trained. It ran on a supercomputer, and it was the results of that, the trained neural network, was then packaged up, put into the driver, or put into the DLL that's included with the game, and that is then run. You're not running the AI at the time, you're running what the AI learned. Now, AMD's solution, that is just hand-tuned. It's not AI-driven. And it was funny, one place I did see somebody saying that, oh, well, AMD's using AI as well for training. It's like, no, they didn't. They stated that they did not. There's no AI involved with this. But at least, you know, the person was accurate in that, you know, the whole, you know, AI could have been used to train it initially and not used at all at runtime, because it's not needed then. Maybe I'm just hearing that plane. You know, plane go by. Really hoping to see a minigun in it. Oh, there we go. There's one. Oh, there's a race here. I am not doing it.
Now you're gonna be sorry.
Alright. It's a personal defense weapon. It's the ultimate personal defense weapon. At least in this game it is. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how the technology develops. It is not yet open source, is my understanding. Like, AMD just hasn't yet shared the source code for FSR 2.0, but that's coming. And it will be interesting to see how it is implemented in other games, how it is refined. Also, it's worth noting that, you know, AMD had pledged and said that, well, wait, no, they had not pledged. They said they were going to look in... Wait. No, what was it? There was something they said that they would be looking in... I think they did say that they were going to release a version of it that basically stripped out the, or disabled rather, the upscaling portion. Because part of it is also its own temporal anti-aliasing, its own TAA method. Which, that was one thing the Hardware Unboxed video talking about it, was saying that it actually, FSR 2.0 is actually providing that, you know, better than native image quality, but is with the qualification that Deathloop's own TA is kind of soft. Whereas the implementation that FSR is using, possibly combined with its sharpening, it's producing a sharper image in the end, so it looks better than when you just run with TAA on. And yeah, eventually AMD is going to share that TAA method, so that way, you know, you can turn that on if you don't need the performance benefit, and then you could, you know, turn that on with the upscaling to have the performance benefit as well. So yeah, it's, you know, good time. Yeah, that's the last thing I've got noted. That's something that's kind of neat. So they also, AMD shared a preview driver that I've been busy this week, so I haven't looked too much into this. But apparently it includes optimizations for DirectX 11 to the tune of, some people were saying they were finding improvements of like 17% performance improvements. I think some were even saying that some games they were seeing 30%. That's big. I don't know how good some people's memory is, but I can remember, I think it was with Maxwell. The Maxwell era, I don't think it was Pascal yet. NVIDIA released a driver that was a major DirectX 11 improvement. Performance improvement. And I'm pretty sure that was the one that kinda ended up being something they'd regret. I mean, they have since fixed it, but it did initially prove some issues for them. And I think actually it is still present in some ways, the issue. But what I'm pretty sure they did with that driver was they faked multi-threading for DirectX 11. DirectX 11 is not normally multi-thread. It can be, but it's not normal. Holy! It's normally single-thread. And, well, as you'd think, multi-threaded, you can substantially improve its performance. I don't remember which it is, but there is... I think it is one of the 3D Mark feature tests, where it will do single-threaded and multi-threaded runs. But what NVIDIA did is they figured out how to, not necessarily well, but well enough, take the single-thread for DirectX 11 and split up across multiple threads. And doing that did provide enough of a performance benefit to actually prove worth it for them. It won't always, though, because you then have to have another thread manage that, especially because you're doing something that it's not meant to do. So that, I mean, improved performance in some cases, but straight up properly multi-threaded DirectX 11 code would be better in all cases, kind of thing, because he was adding overhead, and that's what ended up hurting NVIDIA later on, because with DirectX 12, it's more a thing that the developers should just multi-thread the code initially, right? So, you don't need that. Thing is, it was still present for the initial DirectX 12 drivers and such. Okay. I was just trying to figure out exactly where I was. So this increase in overhead was still there. So you actually did see initially, when DirectX 12 was first really coming out, NVIDIA GPUs having... Wow, I'm actually really short on this one. Having actually worse performance than the AMD counterparts in DirectX 12. And also in Vulkan. I don't think it was solved in time for when Vulkan was really being used as well. You saw AMD winning, in part just because, yes, their DirectX 11 stuff wasn't as fast because it wasn't used multi-threading stuff, but the overhead from the driver was so much lower that it allowed DirectX 12 to perform even better. Whereas NVIDIA, that overhead was lowering the capabilities for DirectX 12. They've done a lot to address that. I think, though, it might still be the case that NVIDIA drivers have greater overhead, but it's a lot better than it was. But it still is one of those things where it's like, it's a very arguable point that reviewers, if they have the time, because not all reviewers have the time. I don't have the time if I were doing it. That like when reviewing a CPU, you should not just use the NVIDIA GPU. You should actually use both, because you may find that one GPU performs better on a CPU than another GPU. Well, an AMD GPU might perform better than NVIDIA GPU or vice versa because of driver issues with a specific CPU. That's what happened with Rise of the Tomb Raider and when Zen first released. That's not going to be the only example of that, I believe. But, I mean, it's also, especially with Alder Lake, that's a huge example of where you'd want to actually test both. Because that overhead stuff, maybe that actually wouldn't be a problem for the NVIDIA drivers, because maybe that was put onto the E-cores, where, it's like the game performance isn't going to be impacted because it's on the E-cores, while the game will probably be running mostly on the P-cores. I don't know if that's how that would actually work out, because the work it would have been doing would have been important, so maybe that would be on the P-cores. But it still is the whole, you'd want to actually see that, so you'd need to test both. And I feel like for a while the result with Zen, even though Zen was competitive, but it wasn't beating Intel, Zen won. But I think that for a while it did have a number of places where they did actually make sure that they collected data with both AMD and NVIDIA GPUs for CPUs. But I think a lot of places have stopped doing that now, where it's just the old, we're using the fastest to remove any bottlenecks. It's like, well, you don't actually know, I mean, the hardware might not be the bottleneck, but you don't know about the drivers, so you actually should test with both, kind of thing. I'm just trying to remember, how exactly did I get all the way to that? Oh yeah, that's right, the preview driver. So yeah, it will be interesting to see that eventually going live. And yeah, some people might be thinking, oh, well, it's DirectX 11. How does that matter? You know, that's old, that's out of date. It's DirectX 12 and Vulkan now. Okay, let me tell you something. There's a lot of new games coming out that's still DirectX 11. A lot. Because it's solid, it's stable, and I can believe that a lot of people, that's just what they're familiar with. And it's also probably going to be easy to work with. DirectX 12 is a low-level API. Vulkan is low-level API. That means that the developers need to do more to manage it themselves. They can't just allow the API to manage itself like they can with DirectX 11. Yes, there are new technologies, VRS, variable rate shading, ray tracing, sampler feedback, mesh shaders that are DirectX 12 and Vulkan only. Those aren't coming to DirectX 11, but for a lot of games, you don't need more than that. You don't need more than DirectX 11. That's just true. So, still trying to improve DirectX 11. That is a good thing to do. It would also be interesting, though, if you saw something like DXVK, which can take, that's 8, 9, 10, and 11, I believe, and run it, intercept their draw calls, and send them to Vulkan. If you could do the same thing, intercepting DirectX 8, 9, and 10, and send that to 11, I think Just Cause 2 is DirectX 9 or 10. Probably 9? Let me actually look it up, because there's a place you can find out. PC Gaming Wiki will have that. It's a nice resource for various things like that. Some 2010 to... It is DirectX 10. Okay. I would have thought DirectX 9. But anyway. Oh wait, is this the one? I'm trying to remember. You need DirectX 10 for stuff like, yes, I think you need it. For things like CSAA? Yes, and EQAA. That's not really important. But, yeah, I mean, it's... If they had a way to wrap DirectX 10, 9, and 8, so it runs in 11, and then you improve 11's performance, that actually could be useful. And that legitimately is part of the reason that DirectX VK exists, but also Zinc, which is the project to take OpenGL and have it run on Vulkan. That the reason why they're doing that is because then you maintain that and you maintain Vulkan. You no longer need to maintain OpenGL. So you can have a lot of old software. There's a lot of like CAD type software that's OpenGL only. And sometimes it's old OpenGL. Well, if you can use Zinc then to convert that to Vulkan, you can get a performance benefit from that, but even if you don't, it's still, you're removing the need to have to develop OpenGL. Well, maintain good hardware support in OpenGL. I don't know if that's the case, if there's projects to do something similar with DirectX's 8, 9, and 10 running on 11. Or I could believe that for some it would be 8, 9, 10, and 11 running on 12. But it still is improving DirectX 11 performance. That's so many games that will benefit directly from that. And if there is such a project, and I feel like I'd seen at one point somebody talking about that. But in any case, it's still a very good thing. So it will be interesting to see. It's also a preview driver, so the improvements might even improve over time. Unfortunately, I think most of what I was seeing with people testing with the newest GPUs, but I think I did see somebody say that the improvements also felt on older GPUs. Yeah, which actually that reminds me of something, going back to the open source driver stuff on Linux. RADV I talked about, that being the community project for an open source AMD Vulkan driver, they are doing weird and wonderful things with that. I'm serious. In that they actually enabled ray tracing on, like, not even just RDNA 1, like Vega and GCN. Well, the various GCN variants, which Vega, yes, was included, but Polaris, the islands, so that would be the R9 300 series, the R9 200 series, and I think it would even go all the way back to the HD 7900 series, which were the original GCN 1.0 cards. Yeah. Ray tracing on those. No, it would not go well, but it still is managing to enable that. Is that something AMD themselves would ever do? I doubt it. I don't think they'd ever spend their time doing that, because the performance benefit wouldn't be there. Well, the performance would be so bad that the benefit from doing it, why? There'd be nothing gained. But it's when the community wanted, I'm guessing they just wanted to see if they could do it, found they could, so they did, and it's a toggle now, so people can turn that on and off. That's why open source drivers can really be powerful, at least on Linux. Because I don't think that's a kind of competition that AMD's really worried about. It's like, who wants to run ray tracing on an RX 580? It's not going to do a good job. But we can. Good for you. But there's other things that can be done that would be much more of an actual competition for AMD and eventually NVIDIA now. That, yeah, it could be good. It could be very, very good and very interesting. See what comes of it. All right. I'm just trying to think if I got anything else to talk about. Nothing in my notes. I already went through all those. As I said, I shared the code for the Shiny applet, the thing for processing, for making the statistics and graphs interactive. And here, you know what? Let me even do this. I'm gonna log in. I'm gonna look at the stats, which I probably shouldn't. They will be disheartening, but it's still, why not? Okay, that's not too bad. So some of this would include me, but the Dying Light 2 table, so that's what I actually included in the link to in the review, because that's, in the performance analysis, because that's what actually has all of the data from the performance analysis. 4.43 hours. Which is not as impressive when you remember that, and that's how much usage, but there's a minimum of 10 minutes on that, because once you start the instance, it will not idle. Well, it can idle for 10 minutes before it actually goes back to sleep. So minimum of 10 minutes. I could actually set that down to 5 minutes, but I know it takes a while to load, so I'd let it be at that. But 4.43 hours is, no, not really a whole lot of use. But, I mean, it's something at least. And then the just Dying Light 2 version, which is the complete applet. So it's got all of the graphs in there, which the tables doesn't, because it would run past the 1 gig RAM limit. But it's only the review data, so the data from months ago from the review. That's at 1.07 hours. Some of that, again, is me. Because it starts up the instance every time that I update it, and I have made some updates to that. But yeah. I don't necessarily consider this very hopeful. Maybe I'm just, performance analysis might not have been the best way to share that. But and we'll see. I'm gonna keep using it myself, and I'm gonna try to find other uses, other ways to keep it in use publicly. So yeah. We'll see. I think that it's a really neat tool. I think it's a very powerful tool, and I hope that eventually, it gets recognized for that by somebody. I mean, seriously, how many places can you think of that don't just tell you the stats, but let you actually do some of the stats yourself, to get some of the values out that you want, and also to, zoom in on the graphs and be able to get specific data out of them. I don't think anyone else is doing that. So, yeah, it's like I am offering something special with that. So, yeah. Hopefully hopefully it is just slow to catch on, and that it will catch on even. Alright, well, I'm going to be stopping so I can get this get the audio processing and get this uploaded. See you next time.